Noah?
Stay close. We surprised you. Who is she?
Mommy, why is it red?
It's just resting.
Count the buttons for mommy. How long?
8 months.
We have a son.
The man who was never caught. Aurelia Tower stood tall over downtown Busan, shining in the early morning light like it had nothing to hide. The building looked clean and powerful, made of glass and white stone that reflected the sky. Inside, the floors were smooth marble. The air smelled faintly of leather and expensive perfume. The lobby was always quiet in the mornings, the kind of quiet that felt controlled, as if even whispers needed permission to exist. At exactly 7:43 a.m., a black Bentley rolled up to the entrance. Min Jae-hyun stepped out first. He did not rush. He never rushed. He closed the car door gently, straightened his back, and adjusted his charcoal suit jacket with calm, careful fingers. Everything about him looked measured. Nothing about him looked accidental. For 12 years he had run Busan's most feared underground network, the Crescent Syndicate. Deals were made quietly. Problems disappeared quietly. And in all those years, not one scandal had attached itself to his name. Not one mistake had surfaced. He moved like a man who believed he could not be touched. His face was sharp and striking. His jawline clean and strong. His dark eyes watched everything. The guards at the door, the receptionist behind the desk, the reflection of himself in the glass walls. He did not need to raise his voice to command space. His presence alone shifted the air around him. Women noticed him. Men stepped aside. No one asked questions. From the other side of the car, Hannah Seo stepped out. She wore a cream silk blouse tucked neatly into a fitted pencil skirt. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement. Her hair fell smoothly over her shoulders. She walked beside him, close but not clinging. Her fingers brushed his arm lightly, as if reminding the world that she was allowed there. She laughed at something he murmured under his breath. The sound was soft and careful. She knew how to play her role. She never demanded too much. She never made scenes. She understood that the power she stood next to could disappear just as easily as it had appeared. Together they walked into Aurelia Tower. The lobby doors opened for them immediately. The staff nodded politely. The elevator stood waiting, its polished steel doors reflecting their images side by side. They stepped inside. 3 blocks away, Clara Bennett tightened the straps on her son's small backpack. The morning air felt cooler in her part of the city. She bent down slightly to fix the collar of his shirt. Noah looked up at her with wide eyes. "Mommy, are we seeing Daddy today?" he asked. His voice was small and hopeful. It went straight through her chest. "Yes, baby," she said with a gentle smile. "We're surprising him." She had not called Min Jae to tell him they were coming. She wanted it to be natural. She wanted him to look happy when he saw them. She wanted to feel like they used to. There was a time when he would pull her into his arms in their small kitchen and tell her she was the only steady thing in his life. Back when he looked at her like she was home. She missed that man. She did not yet understand that the version she missed might never have been fully real. Clara took Noah's hand and they walked toward Aurelia Tower together. When they entered the building, Clara felt slightly out of place. The lobby was grand and cold. Her shoes made soft sounds against the marble floor. Noah squeezed her fingers tighter as he stared up at the tall ceilings and shining walls. The elevator doors were already beginning to close. "Wait," Clara called softly as she stepped forward. The doors paused. They reopened. Inside stood Min Jae-hyun and Hannah Seo. Noah saw his father first. His face lit up instantly. "Daddy." The word burst out of him with pure joy. Inside the elevator something changed. Min Jae felt it immediately. His chest tightened. His hands went cold. He turned slowly toward the voice. Not surprised. Not confused. Just slow, like a man who already knew the damage had been done before the moment arrived. Clara stood there. His wife. Come. So beautiful in a quiet way. She held Noah's hand gently. Her eyes moved carefully from her husband's face, to Hannah's fingers resting near his arm, to the small space between them. That space said everything. No one spoke. Noah ran forward and hugged his father's leg tightly. "Daddy, we surprised you." Clara's voice came next. Soft. Controlled. "Noah. Come back to mommy." She was not shouting. She was not crying. She was understanding. That was worse. The elevator doors slid closed behind them with a quiet sound. For people stood inside the small metal box. One marriage. One secret. One child. One truth that could not be hidden anymore. And then, the elevator jerked suddenly. The lights flickered once, twice, and everything stopped. The red light confession. The elevator froze between floors. There was a sharp jolt, not violent but sudden enough to steal the air from the room. The smooth hum of movement stopped instantly. The lights overhead flickered once, then twice before shifting into a deep emergency red. The bright silver walls of the elevator were now washed in a dim crimson glow. Shadows stretched across their faces, making everything feel smaller and closer. Noah stopped smiling. He looked up at the ceiling, then at his mother. "Mommy, why is it red?" Min-jae moved first. He crouched down quickly, forcing calm into his voice. "It's just resting," he said quietly. "Like sleeping." But Clara heard it. The tremor. The slight shake beneath his words. He had faced dangerous men without blinking. He had handled threats without hesitation. But right now, in this small red-lit box, his control was slipping. Clara knelt beside Noah. Her hand rested gently on his shoulder. "Can you count all the buttons for Mommy?" she asked softly. Noah's eyes brightened again. The task always excited him. "Okay," he said eagerly. He turned toward the panel and began touching the buttons one by one. 1, 2, 3. His cheerful voice filled the silence. Clara rose slowly. Her eyes shifted to Hannah. There was no yelling. No shaking. No tears. She studied the other woman the way someone studies a wound, carefully, calmly, trying to understand how deep it goes. "Who is she?" Clara asked without taking her eyes off her husband. "She works for me," Min-jae answered. His voice was flat. "In what department?" Clara continued. Silence settled over the elevator. The red light seemed heavier now. Hannah's fingers, which had been folded neatly in front of her, tightened slightly. Her composure began to crack. The confidence she wore earlier in the lobby was fading. "I didn't know about him," Hannah said quietly. "He told me you were separated." Clara turned toward her. Slowly. "We share a joint account," she said evenly. "A son. And a vacation booked in March." Hannah swallowed hard. "I see," she whispered. "Do you?" Clara asked. The question was not loud. It was not cruel. It was tired. Min-jae slid down until his back touched the elevator wall. For the first time since she had known him, he looked smaller. The red light cut across his face, deepening the lines around his eyes. "How long?" Clara asked him. He hesitated. 8 months. The answer came out clean. Simple. Heavy. Noah continued counting in the background. 10, 11, 12. "Were there others?" Clara asked. Another pause. "Yes." Clara nodded once. She had felt it before. The distance. The late nights. The careful silence. She had told herself it was work. Stress. Responsibility. But hearing it confirmed felt like swallowing something sharp. It hurt in a place she could not touch. "Why did you marry me?" she asked. Min-jae looked up at her. There was no anger in his face. No calculation. No attempt to control the moment. There was grief. "Because you were the only thing I ever wanted that I didn't know how to keep." The red light flickered slightly as he spoke. Noah's voice continued in the background. 14. 15. Clara's jaw tightened. "You punished me for loving you." It was not a question. Min-jae closed his eyes briefly. "Yes," he whispered. The word changed something. The air felt different. There was no apology wrapped in excuses. No clever explanation. Just truth. Ugly and direct. For the first time in their marriage, there were no walls in his voice. The elevator suddenly flickered again. The red light snapped back to full brightness. White light flooded the small space. The normal hum of machinery returned as the elevator groaned and began moving upward. Reality rushed back in. The mirror-like walls reflected all 4 of them clearly now. Hannah straightened her blouse and stepped slightly away. "Your 9 a.m. board meeting," she said quietly. The words were professional. But Clara heard what lived inside them. Familiarity. Routine. Access. "She knows your schedule," Clara said. Something inside her shifted. Close. Hardened. She looked at Min-jae fully now. "I moved to your country," she said. "Learned your language. Raised our son mostly alone while you worked late nights." Her voice cracked once. Only once. "You gave her my hours." The elevator slowed. There was a soft chime. The doors slid open. Clara reached for Noah's hand. He stopped counting immediately and looked up at her, confused but trusting. She lifted her chin. Without another word, she walked out of the elevator. And left the silence behind her. The man who controlled everything, except this. The Skybridge Conference Suite sat high above Busan's harbor, surrounded by glass walls that revealed the restless sea and the steady movement of ships below. It was a room designed for power. The table was long and polished. The chairs were dark leather. Screens glowed softly at the front of the room, displaying charts, numbers, and projections. Min Jae sat at the head of the table. This was his seat. The place he had worked years to occupy. From here, he had controlled decisions that shaped businesses, investments, and quiet operations no one outside his circle would ever understand. Executives spoke one after another. A presentation clicked forward. Slides changed. Numbers moved across the screen. Profits, risks, expansion. Min Jae heard none of it. His eyes were open, focused in the right direction. He nodded at the right moments. But inside his mind, the elevator still glowed red. All he could hear was Clara's voice. I kept knocking. The words echoed with a quiet force that refused to fade. He remembered the way she had said it. Not angry. Not screaming. Just tired. Honest. A man who had controlled everything in his life had not controlled that moment. After 20 minutes, he raised his hand slightly. That's enough, he said. The room fell silent immediately. The executives gathered their papers without argument. They were used to his sudden decisions. They did not question them. Within seconds the room emptied. The glass doors shut softly. Min Jae remained seated. The city stretched below him. The harbor moved in steady rhythm. Life continued outside, unaware that something inside him had shifted. The empire he had built felt distant now. Important but empty. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Clara's name sat at the top of his recent calls. He stared at it for a long moment. He did not press it. Instead, he scrolled down and selected another contact. His mother. The woman who had once told him Clara would never fully understand his world. The woman who had worried that love would weaken him. She answered after 2 rings. She's leaving me, he said. There was silence on the other end. Then his mother's voice came, softer than he expected. Then stop her. You are many things, Min Jae. But you are not a man who lets the right thing walk away and lives comfortably. He closed his eyes briefly. There were no more words between them. He ended the call and stood up. For the first time in years, he left a meeting unfinished not because of strategy, but because of regret. He drove home himself. The road felt longer than usual. When he entered the apartment, it was quiet. Too quiet. The silence felt heavier than the one in the elevator. Near the door stood a suitcase. Half-packed. Not fully closed. He stared at it for a moment, understanding what it meant. She had not left yet. But she was preparing to. He walked down the hallway slowly. He found Clara in Noah's room. She was kneeling by the bed, folding small shirts one by one. Her movements were steady and careful, as if focusing on the fabric helped her hold herself together. She did not turn around when she heard him. I told you, she said calmly. I know, he replied. Then why are you here? Her voice was flat. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just tired. He stepped closer but kept a small distance between them. Because you kept knocking, he said. And I want to open the door. She turned slowly to face him. Her eyes were red but dry. That's a beautiful sentence, she said quietly. You've always been good with those. He did not defend himself. I know, he admitted. I've been terrible with everything that follows. The honesty felt unfamiliar in his mouth, but he did not take it back. He moved a little closer. I ended it. Today. Completely. She searched his face carefully, looking for cracks, for signs of performance, for the man who knew how to manipulate words. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. I'm asking to start. Therapy. Transparency. Whatever it takes. He meant it. And for the first time, he understood that meaning it was not the same as proving it. Before Clara could answer, small footsteps echoed down the hallway. Daddy's home. Noah appeared in the doorway, smiling widely. Min Jae turned instinctively and opened his arms. Noah ran into them. Min Jae lifted him up and held him tightly. His grip was firm, protective. Almost desperate. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the familiar scent of his son's shampoo, feeling the weight of him in his arms. He understood now how close he had come to losing this. Over Noah's shoulder, his eyes met Clara's. She stood still for a second. Then she stepped aside. Don't waste this, she whispered. His voice was steady. Never again. The work of rebuilding. Rebuilding did not begin with flowers, long speeches, or dramatic promises. It began quietly. It began in rooms that smelled like coffee and soft lighting. In therapy offices where the chairs were too comfortable and the silence lasted longer than either of them liked. Healing did not look powerful. It looked awkward. It looked like Min Jae sitting across from a stranger and admitting things he had never said out loud. He spoke about fear. About growing up in a home where weakness was treated like failure. About learning early that control meant safety. About how building power felt easier than building closeness. At first his words came slowly. He was used to commanding rooms, not exposing himself inside them. But each session stripped away another layer. Each conversation forced him to confront the parts of himself he had avoided. Rebuilding also looked like small humiliations. Deleting numbers from his phone while Clara watched. Handing over passwords without being asked twice. Answering questions without anger. Sitting with discomfort instead of shutting down. Clara did not reward him with quick forgiveness. She did not suddenly become warm again. Trust does not grow overnight. It regrows like scar tissue. Slow. Sensitive. Easily irritated. Some evenings, Clara lay awake staring at the ceiling while Min Jae's breathing settled beside her. She wondered if she was being foolish. She wondered if she was teaching herself to accept less than she deserved. She replayed the elevator in her mind, the red light, the quiet confession. Sometimes she felt strong. Other nights she felt tired. Min Jae had his own restless nights. He would wake in the dark and watch the outline of Clara's back turn slightly away from him. He would wonder how he had come so close to losing the only steady thing in his life. He realized something uncomfortable. The affair had not begun because he lacked love. It had begun because he did not believe he deserved it. Power had always felt easier to manage. Deals could be controlled. Outcomes could be predicted. Emotions were different. They required vulnerability. They required surrender. He had built walls to protect himself. But in doing so, he had left Clara standing outside. Their rebuilding included arguments. Not screaming. But real conversations. Clara spoke about loneliness. About eating dinner alone too many nights. About attending school meetings by herself. About smiling in front of others while feeling invisible at home. Min Jae listened. Sometimes he tried to explain too quickly. Sometimes he slipped into old habits of defending himself. But therapy had taught him something simple. Listening mattered more than winning. He began leaving board meetings early when Noah had school recitals. He began checking his phone less during dinner. He began asking Clara about her day, and staying present long enough to hear the answer. None of it felt dramatic. It felt steady. And steady was new for him. Noah watched everything in the quiet way children do. He did not understand adult betrayal. He did not understand therapy. He only understood when both his parents were sitting at the same table. He understood when they came to his school together. He understood when laughter returned slowly, carefully to the living room. He wanted both of them in the same room. That was enough for him. Clara noticed the effort. She noticed when Min Jae chose to stay home instead of attend a late-night business dinner. She noticed when he apologized without turning it into a speech. She noticed when he admitted fear instead of hiding behind confidence. But healing was not romantic. There were no grand movie moments. There were quiet check-ins. Honest conversations. Small reassurances. And sometimes setbacks. There were days when Clara felt anger rise again without warning. A memory. A doubt. A simple thought of how easily he had lied for 8 months. On those days Min Jae did not argue. He stayed. He answered. He allowed her questions. It was not comfortable. But it was necessary. For the first time in his life, Min Jae chose discipline over escape. In the past, when things felt overwhelming, he had run toward distraction. Toward work. Toward other people. Toward anything that numbed discomfort. Now he stayed inside it. He attended sessions regularly. He read what the therapist suggested. He asked Clara what she needed instead of assuming. It did not make him perfect. It made him present. Clara did not soften immediately. But she began to notice something new in him. Not charm. Not control. Consistency. And consistency over time began to feel safer than promises. Rebuilding was not about forgetting what happened. It was about deciding whether the truth they had uncovered was strong enough to build something more honest. Some evenings, they sat on opposite ends of the couch with Noah between them, watching television quietly. The distance was still there. But so was effort. Healing did not erase scars. It taught them how to live with them. And for the first time, Min Jae was not trying to outrun the damage. He was trying to repair it. The door opens. Months later, the kitchen felt different. It was the same apartment. The same marble counters. The same view of the city beyond the windows. But something in the air had changed. It no longer felt tense or fragile. It felt lived in again. Clara stood at the counter slicing vegetables for dinner. The late afternoon light filtered through the windows, soft and warm. The sound of the knife against the cutting board was steady and calm. Min-jae walked into the room quietly. There had been a time when he would have come up behind her automatically, wrapping his arms around her waist without thinking. Back then, closeness had been instinct. Later, it had become uncertain. Now it was something he approached carefully. He stepped closer. But he did not touch her. He waited. It was a small pause, barely noticeable to anyone else. But it meant everything. Clara felt him behind her. She knew the sound of his footsteps. She knew the rhythm of his breathing. For a moment, she continued slicing, considering the space between them. Then she leaned back. Just slightly. It was not dramatic. It was not emotional. It was intentional. He let out a quiet breath he did not realize he had been holding. Slowly, he rested his hands gently at her waist. Not gripping. Not claiming. Just present. That simple exchange carried more meaning than any speech could have. Trust had not returned in a rush. It had returned in inches. From the hallway, Noah's laughter burst into the room. He ran past them, toy airplane in hand, making loud engine noises as he circled the kitchen table. Min-jae smiled automatically at the sound. Clara glanced over her shoulder at their son and then back at Min-jae. He reached for her hand. Not to lead. Not to control. To ask. His fingers laced through hers lightly, giving her room to pull away if she wished. She didn't. She squeezed back. It was a small gesture, but it felt steady. Real. Chosen. Life outside their apartment had not slowed down. The city still moved fast. Deals were still made. Meetings still filled his calendar. Power still followed him wherever he went. Min-jae remained a man others respected and feared. But something inside him had shifted. He no longer confused fear with strength. He had learned that fear could build loyalty. It could silence questions. It could create distance that looked like admiration. But fear could not build a home. Only honesty could do that. And honesty had cost him more than he ever expected. There were still moments when Clara grew quiet. Still nights when old memories flickered through her thoughts. Healing had not erased the past. It had simply made it visible. But the difference now was presence. When she felt doubt rise, she spoke it. When he felt defensive, he paused before responding. They had learned how to sit in discomfort together instead of escaping it separately. Min-jae watched Clara move around the kitchen, comfortable in her own space again. There was strength in the way she carried herself now. Not the quiet endurance she once relied on, but clear awareness. She was not choosing him because she had nowhere else to go. She was choosing him because she believed change was possible. That knowledge humbled him more than any business loss ever could. Noah ran back toward them and wrapped his arms around both their legs at once. "Family hug," he declared proudly. Min-jae and Clara laughed softly and bent down to include him fully. In that simple moment, nothing dramatic happened. There were no promises spoken aloud. No grand declarations. Just warmth. Just presence. Just a small boy who believed his parents belonged in the same room. Min-jae held Clara's gaze over Noah's head. There was no red emergency light now. No trapped silence. No forced confession. But he remembered that moment clearly. The elevator had stopped their marriage as they knew it. It had exposed everything they had avoided. It had removed every distraction and forced them to look at each other without armor. In that confined space, the pretending ended. And once pretending ended, rebuilding became possible. Clara stood upright again, returning to the stove. Min-jae stayed beside her, close but not crowding. The empire still existed. The city still demanded his attention. But when he looked around the kitchen at the small details of their life, he understood something deeply for the first time. Power could command respect. Money could secure comfort. Control could shape outcomes. But only honesty could make this room feel like home. And this time he intended to protect that truth more fiercely than anything else he had ever built. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.